Something exciting arrived in the post and I wanted to share it with you. It's the paperback version of fantasy map making. I know how many of you like map making. Yeah, you probably would not watch these videos on this channel if you didn't like topics like this. So in today's video, I decided to flip through the book and give you an overview of my process when it comes to map making and how the book looks like. So let's get into it. So guys, have a look at this fantasy map making in paperback. I've really been looking forward to receiving this in the post. As you can see, it has this nice glossy cover. Last time I did an unpacking of The Desolation, the first book of the KEYSTONE trilogy. I was also amazed by the printing quality of CreateSpace. And once again, I have to say that this is really good quality. So I wanted to show you what fantasy map making, what's inside this book. So let's have a look. The first thing it covers is about, is this book for me? So I'm speaking a bit to those who might think that they're picking up a book about how to draw a map, which this book is not covering. This book is about how to design your map. And it doesn't matter if you are designing a map for fantasy role-playing, fantasy books or games or whatever it is, but this book will cover you for that, but it won't teach you how to draw. It says it's a second edition, and the reason for that is that second edition, I wrote a first edition a long time back. It was actually the first book I ever wrote, and well, as with everything else, the more you do it, the better you become. And when I first wrote the first edition, it was not as good as I wanted it to be. So now, many books later, I felt I could do the topic more justice, so I decided to write a second edition. So this section just explains the differences between the first and the second edition. And in fact, some of the parts of this book has been completely rewritten, and other parts of this book is actually completely new chapters. So the first thing is like an introduction part. The amazing world of maps is what we're covering here. And then we're getting into the table of the content. Let me just show you. Look at that one. 139 pages of fantasy map making. Isn't that just awesome? I think it's so cool. So of course we need to talk about fantasy map. What is a fantasy map? That's a good place to start, I think. And also, are maps even important? So when we're building our worlds, is it important to have a fantasy map? And also, there is quite some excuses out there about not creating the map. So I want to try to debunk some of those in the hope that we will see more fantasy maps in the world, because I want to see more maps. And here you see two color pictures. So actually, when I uploaded this book or created this book, I decided to keep it with color images, because there are several places in this book, as you will see later on, where I'm starting some example maps. And I felt that if those were black and white, it would be hard to see some of the stuff I'll show you later. So because of that, I decided to keep color maps. Here you can see one of Middle-earth, and this one is Westeros from Game of Thrones. But essentially, it is just so that if I kept them black and white, it would be harder to read some of my examples, so I didn't want to do that. The downside is that the printing cost of colors are vastly higher than black and white. So I ended up in a situation where the price for this paperback is, well, more than what you normally see for paperback. And it's just simply because Amazon won't allow you to price it lower than the printing cost, so there is that. But nevertheless, I've decided to keep it in color. So we cover, so do I need a map? It's important when we're building fantasy worlds to have a map. And then we're getting into the good stuff. Step one, something to consider. So this is about what you need to think about before you start making your map. I believe very thoroughly or very seriously that you should be thinking about some stuff before you make the map, and that's what I call the wish list. Basically creating a list of things that you need to include on your map before you just start making it. But once you've done that, then we're getting into tools. So the first thing you could decide to do is, of course, hand draw your maps. Now again, this is not going to tell you how to draw the map, but it is going to tell you some stuff about choosing pencils, rulers and erasers, choosing paper, all that good stuff. Or you could decide to use software, in which case I'm covering some different types of software that you can use for your map making. Or thirdly, you could also decide to hire a professional. And let me just show you. In fact, I included some examples here of what you could get if you're paying a professional. I included 3 different versions of my own world of KEYSTONE to show you the different price levels and also what it would look like. So this one comes from Fiverr. It cost me $47.25. This one over here comes from Guru and cost me $153.75. And lastly, this one is completely hand-drawn and was also turned into a map, a poster of this map, which cost me $400. So that gives you a bit of impression on what it is that you can get at the different price levels. Next up is step 3. This is an overview, so it's going to tell you a bit about what it is that we're going to get through the remainder part of the book. So we're going to make a sketch, we're going to add land masses, we're going to do terraforming, islands and lakes, rivers, forests, countries, roads, fantasy, final touches, and then something I call a map master. And of course we start out by making our sketch. And here I'm talking about the size of your world, how to determine how big a world you need to have for your map. And then once that is done, we're getting into creating the land masses. And when we're talking about land masses, we need to consider tectonic plates. What are tectonic plates? So that's what we're covering. As you can see, a lot of good explanations, easy digestible though, and then adding the maps to your fantasy world. Or sorry, adding the tectonic plates. And here's one of the things I talked about before. So this is the example map that will go through the remainder part of the books, and we'll keep adding to it. You know, it's nice and simple, step by step, so that it's easy to follow. And the first thing we're going to do with that is terraforming, which means that we are looking at climate zones. We are adding climate zones to the map. And here is the one very good example on, if I was going to do this book in black and white, you can easily imagine that these lines that goes across here, those are there for a very, very particular reason. But on a black and white picture, that would not look very pretty. So I would probably have to make them really, really thick and black to make them stand out enough. And I didn't want to do that. I don't think that would look very pretty. So I decided against it. Weather patterns is up next. And then we're getting into mountains and deserts. So again, our example map here, you can see that it's now starting to look like something, and also with deserts on it. So next up was islands and lakes. Again, we explained something about islands and lakes and adding them to the map. Same thing goes for rivers. What are rivers and how to place them? And there you go. Actually on rivers, I have to say that I often see fantasy maps where the rivers are placed illogical and incorrect in terms of how rivers normally perform. So this is important to be aware of. But all covered here, easy to do. Forest, we need to add forest, so we do that. And countries, so a few words on countries. As you can see, I'm covering something about nation building here. Now, this is a book on map making, which means that it's not about world building. So I'm not going to cover a lot of stuff on how to build cultures and nations in that sense. But I'm covering just enough that what you need when you're building your map, because some of the things that are very important is the countries and borders and how they come about. So here you can see what it looks like, the countries and borders outlined, and there is a very particular reason why they are looking exactly like this. So that's what I'm covering in these chapters, telling you how to decide where the borders should be. Settlements, so of course we need to add cities to our map. And then we need some roads so people can get around on the map, so we'll add those. That's what we do here. And then fantasy. So, where's all the fantasy? You know, we've covered all kinds of normal things, if I can call it that, you know, mountains, lakes and rivers and forests and all that good stuff, but we don't have any fantasy. This is a fantasy map, right? So yeah, that's what we're adding here. Final touches is something similar to what you usually know. So we're talking about compass roses, scales, something about adding depth. And then I have some thoughts about names and what you need to think about when you decide names for your settlements. Step 14 is then the map master that I said. So this one comes with a downloadable sheet as well, where the map master is designed to figure out what parts of your fantasy map you should be aware of in terms of what you need to infuse into your world building. So the map master will help you do that. Some final words of importance. And then we're getting into the appendices. So I want to show you, Appendix A is showing you the different types of software mentioned in the book. But Appendix B, look at this. So here we have terrain types. So if you have polar terrain on your map, this is all kinds of different terrain types that you can put on a polar region. Same thing for a temperate one. So look, full page of inspiration, and tropical terrain as well. So this is very handy and very, very nice to have. There's a bit about more books that I've written, how to connect with me, and a bit about the author. So that is fantasy map making. I hope you enjoyed that. I've not done these sort of videos before where I've kind of flipped through a book, so let me know in the comment section below if that's something that interests you. I thought it would, since this topic is something we all pretty passionate about here. So yeah, let me know what you think. So paperback is available via Amazon. As I said, slightly more expensive than a normal paperback, but that's not my doing. That's because of the printing cost and the rules enforced by Amazon around that. But if you don't want to shell out that, then yeah, $5 is all that the ebook cost, and that ebook is available across all major platforms. So Amazon, Nook, Google, yeah, all the usual stores you'll be able to find the book. So that's fantasy map making. Thank you for watching, and I guess the only thing that there is left to say is stay safe out there, and see you next Monday.